one logical question is, well, maybe it sounds good, maybe it doesn't. But even if it did sound good, you'd say, well, is anybody doing this? That sounds a little far-fetched. And so far, we're about a year in to sort of publicly having the certification standards out there. And in that year, we actually launched it here in the East Bay last June. There are now over 120 certified B corporations across the country. They represent nearing $1 billion marketplace. They represent well over 30 different industries, everything from local restaurants and sole proprietors to national brands to global financial intermediaries. And they are also all addressing diverse needs. One of the most inspirational things that we found as we spent our couple of years sort of out there talking to folks about what our contribution can be to the space is that there's just an amazing diversity of entrepreneurial energy out there. And that is sort of what makes this economy and this society so vibrant, is the marketplace and is the fact that we honor that entrepreneurial spirit of innovation. And so there are entrepreneurs that are using their business, the power of business and the market, to address a whole diverse array of social and environmental needs. And I don't have to go through them all, but you'll get a sense of some of those here today in hearing from Mike and Reem and Timothy. Let's talk a little bit more in detail about what we mean by standards. And so on the performance standards front, there's something called the B rating system. So you can think of it as an S&P, but for non-financial performance. That doesn't exist today. So there's lots of business associations that have memberships. And typically, what it means to be a member is that you pay dues and you raise your hand when someone asks if you're a green business or a sustainable business. And increasingly, in an increasingly cluttered, crowded marketplace where everybody's claiming to be green or sustainable or responsible or even local, that's not enough. Because HSBC can talk about being the world's local bank, but that's different than New Resource Bank. So so the question is, how do you actually make quantifiable and transparent that which everybody is sort of just asserting prima facie? That assessment tool has to be comprehensive, we talked about. It has to be transparent so people know what the heck you're measuring and why, what the weightings are. It has to be rigorous enough that it's meaningful, but it also has to be viewed through the entrepreneur's lens, which is if it's not doable for the entrepreneur to actually take the time to go through it, then it's pretty much just an intellectual exercise, and it remains at Stanford or Haas or wherever as like a really nifty paperweight, or electronic, whatever the equivalent of an electronic paperweight is. Within that B rating system, there's also management tools called resources, which are there to say, so anybody can use this stuff, whether you want to be a B Corp or not. So you go on to bcorporation.net, and you log in, and you can take the survey and assess where you're at. And there's also tools and resources available for each of those different questions to say, oh, I don't know how to do an environmental audit. I don't know what a local purchasing strategy is. I have no idea what fair trade is. How do I do that? And so at the click of a button, we've aggregated and disseminate for free any of those resources for people so they can move up the ladder from wherever they start. Because we all recognize we're on a journey together and there is no perfectly sustainable company, perfectly beneficial company. At the end of that, no matter what industry or what size of your company is, it generates a B report, right? A one-page nutrition label dashboard for your company's social and environmental impact. And the important additional attribute to the B report is that now you introduce comparability, which as a consumer shopping, or very importantly from a capital markets perspective as an investor, it's all about easy, comparable data. So you can look at stuff both within an industry and across industries, so that if you want to support companies that are having maximum social impact, well then the only way to define that is to say, how do I assess this company versus that company? And to do that, you need some reporting tool that you can use. Lastly, on the governance side, it's not sort of Jay sitting in a room figuring out what's important, God forbid. There's an independent standards advisory council. None of them are paid by us. They are sort of the wisdom keepers of this space with deep environmental expertise, employee benefit and human resources expertise, community development expertise, so SRI, sort of public equity research expertise, et cetera. They're the ones who ultimately decide how that system evolves over time, and it will evolve over time like software. So version 1.0 was out last year. They're already working on version 2.0, because today it's a fairly blunt instrument, admittedly. It's as good as our collective wisdom can put out there, but we all know that there's plenty of things that can improve on it. And so that group is charged with evolving it over time, both as a general tool and as well as to drill down into industry specifics, because obviously a law firm should be measured on different metrics than a financial services firm, than a paper mill. On the legal side, one of the things that was obvious as we sort of interviewed folks and talked to folks around the space, that there's an awful lot of early social entrepreneurs in the for-profit space, particularly in consumer products, that have been sold. So the list is long, right? You know, household names: Ben & Jerry's, Odwalla, Burt's Bees, Tom's of Maine, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so through no fault of their own, they were sort of proving that you could walk and chew gum at the same time in terms of having a social mission and run a profitable business. But nobody ever thought intentionally about the actual design of the corporation, how we're going to deal with liquidity issues, so that whether it was the need for outside capital, the need to access public equity, or to do strategic partnerships to get into new channels of distribution, or just planning succession. Because even if you don't need outside capital, everybody's going to have to plan succession at some point, whether they willingly or not, because we all hit that terminal value. And so the question is, how can we develop a legal structure that's specifically designed to support the growth of mission-driven businesses and allow them to maintain their mission as they grow and as they plan succession? And so the issue here is, how do we institutionalize stakeholder interests? Because the corporate law today is that you have one interest and one interest only, which is to maximize the short-term financial return to shareholders. And that's pretty much the deal. It doesn't make anybody evil. It just means that that's the system that they're playing in. And the system works pretty darn well. But the natural consequence of that system is, when you're maximizing ROI, is you are increasing your numerator, which means you are going to externalize as many costs as possible, whether it's labor or environmental costs, and that drives up your profits, that's your numerator. And you're going to shrink your denominator, which is you want to benefit as few people as possible, which is why capital aggregates. And that's just the basic arithmetic of ROI. And so again, it doesn't make the private sector bad. I'm not here to lambaste corporate greed. It's just say that's the system that's been set up. The system is working awesomely. But if we want to achieve different outcomes, if we want to internalize some of those costs, if we want to increase the number of beneficiaries, if we want to measure something different, which is impact, not just returns, then we have to change the underlying operating system of those companies. And that means changing the legal DNA. And so what these B corporations have done is they've agreed to actually amend their articles of incorporation so that they've expanded the legal responsibilities of the corporation to take into consideration the interests of multiple stakeholders, not just shareholders. And that's a profound repurposing of the organization, which introduces an incredibly higher standard of accountability, which means that the institution, the corporation itself, is now structured in a way to support the ongoing mission of the organization, regardless of whether Mike gets hit by a truck, or Reem decides to sell the business, or Timothy bequests it to somebody. Like these things, we have to build institutions that are built to last, not just in the lifetime of the entrepreneur. Functionally, it reduces liability for directors. So currently, if you run your business this way, you can be sued for a breach of fiduciary duty because you're not maximizing return to shareholders. This actually provides protection for directors who want to run their businesses this way. It expands the rights of shareholders to enforce this higher standard. So as an early stage mission-aligned investor in private equity, as if I invest in NUMI-T and they're a B Corp, now we are on the same page that we can both make sure that we're holding accountable this management or new management to these standards. And it actually increases your sale options. Because if you're not a B Corp and you get 2 offers, guess what you have to do? Take the highest one or get sued. That's pretty much the deal. And so if you're a B Corp and you're presented with multiple offers, guess what? Now you have multiple options. You can still take the higher offer, and that may be the best thing for everybody concerned. Or there may be, instead of $10 a share, it's $9.50 a share, but they're agreeing to keep in place your charitable giving practices, your 100% fair trade, the fact that your offices are in an enterprise zone, the fact that you're solar powered, whatever those things are that are important. Now you have a way to say, I can accept $9.50 a share, or maybe it's even better. I have 2 offers at $10 a share. And this one, I'm now having them compete on the other practices that they're willing to keep in the business. And now I've created a legal way, so that the general counsel is saying, oh no, now we have the opportunity to consider any offer. And now you have to compete not just on the short-term financial return to our shareholders, but on the longer-term impact on community. And lastly, the power of this is not just doing this in individual one-offs, but saying now we can recognize these. It's sort of like, again, the power of branding. So this is now me sort of showing my true colors in terms of where I came from with And One competing against Nike. Is branding matters. Like, we're in an incredibly busy, hectic world, you know, someone wears a little polo pony or they got a Beamer, or, you know, whatever it is, brands are signaling to the marketplace in a shorthand, because images are worth 1,000 words. This is what we stand for. And so now these companies, 125 companies, this billion-dollar marketplace, can now act as one in projecting its voice into the marketplace. And so whether I'm looking for a new financial advisor, or I'm the purchasing manager for a company looking for business products, or I'm buying a cool gift basket for my aunt in Portland, you know, I can now look for companies in any of those sectors and say, oh, that's a company that's seeking to achieve maximum impact. That's who I want to support.